Hey everybody, Forbidden Exile here, and welcome to a new video. So you saw in the title, this is castoncrit Forbidden Rite, adjusted for the new league without a Mageblood. Very efficient, very usable still, and you know, it's my favorite build. I've said it many times in the past, and so we'll just get right into it. Alright, so for the gear, because you're not using a Mageblood, you do need to worry about mana. So you're going to get the Gemini Claw, which gives you 14 mana per enemy hit. So all of your Forbidden Rites and your Cyclone hit, so you'll be getting mana back, so you won't really have to worry about mana with this and a couple other things as well. I've made videos on how to craft this. It's the same concept of crafting the dagger. You can get the +1 all chaos spell skills on here as well. It's just a little more expensive, and I just wanted to kind of make this as budget as possible. But the gist is you get a fractured global crit multi, or fractured attack speed, or crit chance Gemini Claw, and then you use essences to spam the other two that you're missing. And then after that you do suffixes cannot be changed, Veiled Chaos Orb, craft on increased physical damage, % increased physical damage, and then unveil and hope you get one of the chaos or spell skill, chaos or spell damage veiled mods. For this one I got increased chaos damage, and chaos skills have increased skill effect duration. Forbidden Rite scales off of spell damage or chaos damage because it's a chaos skill obviously. So either one is great. It is kind of expensive because it's 2 divines each, plus, you know, the Veiled Chaos Orb. So if you get one of them, the non-chaos is extra chaos, doesn't do any good. So if you want to keep going and try to get the higher tier spell damage with increased mana regeneration, by all means go for that. But otherwise, the only thing left to do with this is to get the enchant on attack speed. For the helm, just Crown of the Inward Eye with the Forbidden Rite, fires an additional projectile enchant on it. This one is perfectly rolled. Try to get it as high of a roll as possible. You don't need that additional projectile enchant on there. Beginning of the league, you know, a few weeks into the league when you have enough currency, depending on what build you league start with, you should be able to afford these, or you can just run lab if you enjoy doing that and try to get it yourself. For the shield, castoncrit Forbidden Rite, this is pretty much a mandatory shield. There's really no way around it. It's Aegis Aurora. You want to try and get as high increased armor energy shield roll as possible. You'll get 5% max cold res, 10 to all res, which is very nice. The increased elemental damage doesn't help you, but recover energy shield equal to 2% of your armor when you block. That's a very big one. Your chaos inoculation, so you don't have any life, you only have energy shield, so you want to recover as much energy shield as possible. For the amulet, you're going to need a lot of strength, a lot of dexterity in order to use this build, so just try to get an amulet with +1 level of all chaos spell skill gems, or chaos skill gems, and then just whatever attributes you're missing. If you do have an open prefix on there, craft on the non-channeling skills have -7 mana cost, and you're good to go. You can use a catalyst to get it to -8 if you would like. For the rings, you're really just going for res here. I could keep rolling this, but I just got an Eyelight ring with, you know, double T1 res on there and some mana regeneration, which helps a little bit. The rest of the stats are pretty pointless, but the Eyelight ring gives you extra chaos damage, and then you can use catalyst to get extra res on there if you would like. Same for this one, but you do want to get despair on hit. Otherwise, it's the same thing. For the body armor, just a regular Skin of the Loyal to get the increased global defenses. You get +1 level of socketed gems. You could go for the Skin of the Lords, but then you need to corrupt all your gems, and it's just kind of a pain, especially early on. For the gloves, nothing super special here. Literally just res, and then the +2 level of socketed AoE gems unveil. You can't just do the crafted one, but you do want to get, these are where your auras are, so you want to get your auras as high of a level as possible. For the Eldritch Implicits, you should eventually go for +2 max cold res, but it's it's pretty expensive to get that, so I just stopped at +1, and then the increased effect of marks on the other one is probably better. I didn't feel like keep rolling it, so I stopped at withered. You inflict, expires 10% slower. For the belt, same thing, just stats and res. I got an Stygian Vise, and then I had this jewel. Enemies withered by you have an extra -2 to all res, which is pretty helpful, and then just some more res on there as well. For the boots, same thing, just res, some move speed. I'm not entirely sure how Onslaught's going to work in the new league, because they took Onslaught support out, with replaced it with momentum, so I'm Not entirely sure how that whole thing is going to work, but Onslaught, it's on kill, which doesn't help you for bosses. And then increased armor. The implicits on that one, I haven't fixed those yet, but it doesn't make much of a difference. As far as the flasks go, so this is like a quasi-cheese way to have a Mageblood, so to speak. So because you're always going to be hitting with critical strikes, then you do chance to gain a flask charge when you deal a critical strike, and then use when charges reach full, so you never have to use any of these. I even have this one set to hit use when you hit a rare unique enemy. So I never have to worry about flasks. The only one I'll hit occasionally is a Quicksilver flask just to keep going. But you got a double crit chance diamond flask, a basalt flask with increased attack speed, a Quicksilver flask with the crafted reduced mana cost of skills. If you don't know how to get this, you basically just buy a bunch of still veiled cinder swallows, unveil a couple of them, and you'll eventually get that craft on there. And then a double armor granite flask. I would say these are pretty much mandatory. This one's definitely mandatory for the reduced mana cost of skills, but you know, you're going to want as much critical strike chance as possible on your build. And then just a Dying Sun to get additional projectiles. That's really all it's for. You take less fire damage when it's going on. So as far as the gems go, it's pretty much the same setup for the big budget Mageblood version. You use Anomalous Withering Step in order to get extra wither debuffs when you proc it. They are allowing you to do Spell Totem, but there's not really a way to fit Spell Totem setup in this build, so you still have to manually cast it. Anomalous Assassin's Mark with an Anomalous Mark on hit. Well, the reason that you use Anomalous is because it reduces the mana cost, and then this one, cursed enemies take increased damage. Ashes of the Stars is the optimal amulet to have in here, but I'm trying to keep this budget as possible, because then that will increase the additional effects from quality for all of your gems. Up here, so you have Culling Strike, linked to cast when damage taken with Purifying Flame and Ball Lightning. So this is just a bunch of extra damage, extra things to, you know, attack when you get hit to proc Culling Strike. On the shield, Anomalous Zealotry, it just gives you an extra crit multi. You don't really need Anomalous, you can just get regular Zealotry. Level 4 Enlighten, you can get away with level 3. And then a 20/20 Tempest Shield, which makes you immune to shock, and it also shocks enemies, so you do more damage because enemies that are shocked take more damage. For your auras, I have Anomalous Determination in here, just an extra % chance to avoid being stunned. You don't need Anomalous, you can just get a regular Determination. Level 21 Period Device is, I wouldn't say mandatory, but you do need a level 20 Period Device because you run that, and that gives you an extra 5 with the extra 5 from this. Plus you get Charisma, you get increased effect of non-curse auras to get your res as high as possible. Level 4 Enlighten, as I said, you can use level 3 because we do have a decent amount of mana left over. And then just a level 20 Val Discipline, because you don't have any life. Val Discipline is your only life flask, quote unquote, but you want to obviously use Discipline to get as much energy shield as possible. And on the boots, we got Flame Dash, Molten Shell. Now Molten Shell did take a hit, so when I pulled up the POB, I couldn't really figure out how to adjust what they changed in Molten Shell, but it did take a pretty significant hit. Its buff can take damage equal to 10% of your armor up to a maximum of 5,000 now, as opposed to 20% up to a maximum of 10,000. So we'll kind of see how that plays out once Path of Building gets updated. And then just a precision because of the Watcher's Eye that I'm using. All right, and for the main skill, Forbidden Rite, I have Anomalous Forbidden Rite in here. You don't really need it. You can just use regular Forbidden Rite. That's linked to Power Charge on critical support. This is how you get power charges. You do get it from Assassin's Mark as well, but Power Charge and critical with this version of it, it's pretty mandatory. Awaken Cast on Crit, so this is level 5. You don't need a level 6. I have Divergent Cyclone just for some extra move speed. You can just use regular Cyclone if you want. Increase critical strike support for more critical strike chance. And then this one I've been kind of playing around with. So Volley, according to Path of Building, does give you more damage because you get additional projectiles. Awakened Void Manipulation is what I used in my Mageblood version, but this one seems pretty fun. Alright, so for the Ascendancies, you'll take Void Beacon to get nearby enemies have negative 20 Chaos Res, Withering Presence to get more Chaos damage and inflict Withered every second, and then hinder nearby enemies as well. And then Unholy Authority to get an extra curse, so you can hit them with Assassin's Mark and Despair. And then you are power charge stacking, so you want to get Forbidden Power to do increased damage per power charge, and then get an additional power charge as well. So the reason why we're stacking so much res is because of Melding of the Flesh. So it gives -70 all elemental resistances, and then -5 to all maximum elemental resistances. I really wish they would unnerf this. When it first came out, they didn't have the -5 to all maximum elemental resistances. It was just -70. So you could pretty easily get to 90% all res, but it's really hard to do now. So take this power charge node down here. The tree will be in the path of building, obviously, but just the gist of it. So you are going to need these mana reservation efficiency of skill 3 passive skill gems or jewels. I don't know how expensive they're going to be now. I paid about 50 chaos for each one of them, and then just rolled them until I got uncompromising for determination, and then righteous path for zealotry. For the large cluster jewel, I try to get arcane heroism now. Arcane Surge, I'm not entirely sure how that's going to change because it's cast speed, and cast speed doesn't do any good for this build, so I might have to change that one, but it shouldn't be too big of a damage loss. Mage Hunter is very important, giving extra 4% chance to block spell damage, gives you increased spell damage, and then another way to gain a power charge when you block. Thermopage, or Thermophage, however you say it. This one could be nice to take because you get spell damage leached as energy shield, so another way to regen your energy shield, but I don't have the points to take it at level 96. For this one, you do want to get a Militant Faith converted by High Templar Dominus with the 1% reduced mana cost of skills per 10 devotion. The channeling skills deal 4% damage. Doesn't matter because we're not really doing damage with Cyclone. There are some other mods that you can get instead of the channeling skills one, but the main one you want to go for is reduced mana cost of skills. The reason why you put this in here on top of the reduced mana cost is Inner Conviction, so you get 3% more spell damage per power charge, and you can't gain frenzy charges. So as of right now, I have 7 power charges, so that's an extra 21% spell damage. Take this power charge node right here, this power charge node right here, take this whole entire chaos cluster. They did take the chaos damage over time multiplier. I think that's one of the only ones that changed, but the +1 level of all chaos skill gems is still in there, and your chaos inoculation, so you don't have to worry about losing life when you use chaos skill or energy shield. Right here. For the other large cluster jewel, you're going to want to get Touch of Cruelty, Unholy Grace, and Wicked Paw. These ones are somewhat, I guess, interchangeable depending on which one you can afford. Unholy Grace will help a lot with attack speed. Chaos spells have 10% chance to hinder, so when you're hindering things, enemies hindered by you take 10% increased chaos damage, so they take more damage. And then this is just flat % increased damage and increased skill effect duration. The only other medium cluster jewels, so I have Eye to Eye Repeater and Eye to Eye and Repeater to get more projectile damage and more attack speed. So for the Watcher's Eye, this is the big one. So you do have to have the gain 23 energy shield per enemy hit while affected by discipline in order for this build to work. Otherwise, you will die. There's just no way around it. You have no way to regenerate energy shield as fast as stuff can hit you. So because Forbidden Rite's hitting and your Cyclone's hitting as well, because you have hits can't be evaded, so your Cyclone is 100% hitting everything. You're always going to be gaining energy shield. If you don't have this and your build, you're dying a lot, that's why. The additional one that makes this Watcher's Eye expensive is to have that one plus gain a flash charge when you deal a critical strike while affected by precision. So I just have a level 2, I think right now, precision in there. And that on top of the gain a flash charge when you deal a critical strike on the flasks themselves, pretty much kind of makes it a Mageblood build without using a Mageblood. The only other thing to note down here is to get a Thread of Hope to lower your elemental resistances even more by 10. It's -10 to -20, so do try to get -10 because with the Melding of the Flesh, you're already fighting against negative resistance. You do this to take Glancing Blows, so it doubles your block attack damage and block spell damage, but you take 65% of the damage from blocked hits. So this is how you can get to 75 on attack and spell. I think I'm at 75 and 74 block spell damage right now. And then Divine Shield, 3% physical damage prevented from hits recently is regenerated as an energy shield per second, so just more energy shield regen, which keeps you alive. All right, so here's Path of Building. So 100% crit chance, trigger rate's 5.53, so it's kind of low, but we don't have a Mageblood. So we're not getting the 10.152% cooldown recovery yet, but we're doing 6.8 million damage at 245,000 effective hit pool. It's pretty tanky. 83 all res on everything, so that's why these are higher. I do have the Dying Sun activated. If it's not on, then you're still doing 4.9 million damage, which is still pretty significant. I do have all these checked because they are always on. Anytime I'm mapping or bossing, doesn't matter. If you do load this Path of Building in, you're going to want to go here and you just have to check power charges. Change this to 15 because you can get 15 withered stacks pretty easily as long as you have the anomalous withering step. 5% chance effective shock. You do actually shock higher than that, but 5 is pretty easy to get, so it's a little more accurate. And then obviously make sure you change this to a Guardian Pinnacle boss, and you're pretty much done. All right, just so you can see what the build looks like, we'll just do a all can go Minotaur map. Just give you an idea. It's really technically a 3-button build, depending on how you want to play it, because I have Molten Shell on the left click, Cyclone on the right click, and then I have Withering Step on the A key. So I'll just walk with Molten Shell first, and then start cycloning. Hit Quicksilver Flask just to move a little quicker. And then once you get to stuff, then just hold A, and you just keep on going. It doesn't do a insane amount of damage, obviously, as you can see, but it does enough. It's a slow process, it's not 20-30 million DPS like the Mageblood version is, but you're super tanky and you regenerate a lot of energy shield very fast. So you don't really have to worry too much about dying. I mean, no build is invincible, so you are going to get one shot. Bosses will kill you. As far as Ubers go, I definitely wouldn't do the non-Mageblood version with Ubers. I would, farm what you can until you can get a Mageblood, craft the dagger, and then basic enemies, sure, and then you should be able to do Ubers just fine. The other thing that you can get to add to this to make clearing and mapping a lot easier, if you want to, is the Forbidden Flesh, Forbidden Flame, in order to get the Explodey Chaos. But that's what I have on my Mageblood version, or had on this one, and had on my one that I played last time. Oh, that'd be sweet. Drop a Headhunter in here. Be useless because I'm playing in standard, but alright, so let's see what Minotaur is. Shouldn't be too rough. I don't have a ton of physical damage reduction, but we have enough energy shield regen. We should be okay. Just hit Val Discipline to help a little bit. As you can see there, my mana still does go down. So mana is still slightly an issue. The instant leech, 10% is leech instantly. That addition in the new league will probably help. Plus, obviously, just the Crucible, getting that the Crucible skill tree on your claw, depending on what you can get on there, or your dagger, could make this build insanely good. So this is by no means a league starter build. I will probably just do a regular witch, fireball, rolling magma, something like that. Probably go elementalist and use Subtractum's fire trap guide that he's going to be putting out in the next day or two, because I mean that build just looks insane. So I'll be interested to see how that goes, and I'm looking forward to playing that build as well, but I will eventually, as I always do, go to castoncrit Forbidden Rite. And as I said just a minute ago, I'm very excited to see what you can get with the Crucible skill trees on your dagger and claw. You might actually be able to do all the endgame content with just the claw non-Mageblood version, depending on what you can actually get on a claw in the skill tree. Get some crazy mods on there, and yeah, we'll see. Alright, well, if you did enjoy the video, please give it a like, and if you are enjoying the content, please consider subscribing, because it really does help me out. And make sure to click that notification bell so you get notified when I post the next video.